Welcome to the Cinematic Military Explainer. Look, today we're stepping into the Defense Academy briefing room to deconstruct an absolute masterclass in modern strategy. We're talking about Desert Storm. We're going to look at exactly how this specific conflict completely shattered traditional paradigms and basically wrote the blueprint for modern warfare.
So, here's our central question today. Was the Gulf War truly the birth of modern warfare? We're diving deep into whether this conflict triggered a fundamental revolution in military affairs. Did it really move the world from industrial-scale mass destruction to this new era of hyper-precise technical integration? Let's find out.
Think of this explainer as your official strategic briefing. We'll be running through a 6-part campaign dissection today. We're starting with the birth of modern war, then moving to the overnight alliance, command reorganization, how helicopters took over as land kings, the entirely new media warfare front, and finally, we'll break down the formula for future wars. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The birth of modern war, and specifically, the sheer scale of Desert Storm. Let's establish just how massive this shift was compared to absolutely anything that came before it.
You see, traditional mid-20th century warfare relied heavily on mass destruction, really rigid ideological battles, and grueling protracted ground campaigns. Well, Desert Storm flipped that entire script. It completely replaced the blunt instrument of mass destruction with incredible technical precision and just remarkably rapid surgical execution.
But hey, while the execution was surgical, the resources were absolutely staggering. I mean, think about this scale for a second. The coalition amassed over 300 warships, 4,000 aircraft, 12,000 tanks, and nearly 2 million soldiers from over 30 different nations. This was a massive, trans-global deployment that literally overwhelmed Iraqi forces before the ground war even really kicked off. 38. That is the magic number here. This campaign began with an unprecedented 38 straight days of relentless, perfectly integrated airstrikes. And we're not just talking about dropping bombs. This was a unified air campaign blending recon, early warning, electronic strikes, and command control all into one seamless, continuous rhythm. And then, after those 38 days of total air superiority, the ground war lasted a mere 100 hours. 100 hours! Ground forces essentially just mopped up a battlefield that had already been entirely dismantled from the sky above. A timeline like that was completely alien to the entire history of warfare. All right, moving to Section 2, the overnight alliance and its network of interests. Because to truly grasp this victory, we have to look at how the geopolitical chessboard was hastily but super effectively rearranged. This wasn't some long-standing alliance rooted in a century of shared ideology, right? No, it was a totally pragmatic network of interests. The U.S., acting under the UN banner, united Arab states, European nations, and even had countries like Japan and Germany stepping up to share the financial burden. It essentially closed the book on those fixed Cold War alliances, replacing them with a highly effective, temporary spiderweb bound by shared strategic goals. There's a quote that perfectly nails this. In the new age, going it alone is not only unwise, it is also not a realistic option. The coalition proved that even absolute military superpowers have to rely on allies. You need them for international legitimacy, massive logistical backing, and critical tech components. Basically, victory requires a network. Section 3. Command reorganization, driven by the DoD Reorganization Act. Having allies is great and all, but coordinating them, that's the real headache. So let's look at the structural overhaul that kept this from becoming total command chaos. You know how military branches historically love their rivalries? Well, this new, streamlined, top-down unified command chain, which was the direct result of the 1986 Goldwater-Nichols Act, stripped all that away. It eliminated decades of inter-service friction between the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The President and SecDef issued orders to Chairman Colin Powell, who then granted complete, absolute battlefield authority to Norman Schwarzkopf. It was unified and trusted command at its absolute finest. And honestly, nowhere was this unified command more obvious than the Air Tasking Order. This thing was wild. It was a massive 300-page daily blueprint that flawlessly coordinated over 1,000 aircraft, taking off from multinational bases. It synchronized transborder cross-service strikes into one devastating, perfectly coordinated attack.
This level of orchestration actually forced a massive evolution in military doctrine, moving way past old Cold War air-land battle concepts. Commanders were now integrating satellites, electronic warfare, and unified air commands to manipulate a simultaneous, omnidimensional combat space. We're talking land, air, space, and cyber. The whole shebang.
Which brings us to Section 4, helicopters taking the crown as land kings, basically becoming the ultimate tank terminators. On the ground, this technological shift challenged literally a century of established military doctrine. For generations, the tank was the undisputed heavyweight king of land warfare. But tanks have issues, right? They suffer from terrain friction, they require massive logistical footprints, and they are super vulnerable when you mass them together. Enter the Apache helicopter. Operating right at treetop level, it has incredible mobility, totally bypasses surface obstacles, and packs devastating firepower. They became the absolute tank terminators out there in the desert.
Operation Cobra was the perfect execution of this new dominance. The 101st Airborne deployed over 300 helicopters for what was the most far-reaching leapfrog maneuver in military history. They flew 100 kilometers deep into Iraq, set up a forward base, and just completely severed the retreat of the Iraqi military. It proved, once and for all, that helicopters could basically act as an independent flying army.
Moving on to Section 5, the media warfare front, the unseen war. Because look, the combat definitely wasn't just confined to the sand. A massive secondary front opened up directly in the living rooms of the entire world.
As the source material puts it so clearly, the media has become an immediate and integral part of warfare and no longer merely provides information coming from the battlefield. With real-time broadcasting suddenly a reality, the media became a direct participant. They weren't just innocent bystanders taking notes, they acted as a huge force multiplier for the coalition.
And narrative management? It was executed with absolute military precision. You had 1,300 frontline reporters covering the war, but all their footage passed through really strict military reviews. This famous CNN effect broadcasted highly curated, slick footage of precision strikes, completely projecting this aura of U.S. invincibility. Pair that with targeted psychological warfare, like literally dropping leaflets to warn Iraqi soldiers of the exact times they'd be struck, and the coalition just shattered enemy morale.
Okay, final section, Section 6, the future war formula, or what we can call the multiple section apple. Let's synthesize everything we've learned from this revolutionary conflict into an actionable blueprint.
Analysts actually love to describe Desert Storm as a multiple-section apple, meaning no matter how you slice it, it offers profound lessons. It is a true masterclass in integrating high technology, unified command, financing temporary coalitions, controlling the media, and asserting psychological dominance. You can't just look at one slice and understand the whole thing. It's the integration of all these sections that defines this new era of combat. So the definitive equation for modern victory becomes crystal clear. Technology plus information plus integration plus narrative control equals victory. Mastering high-tech integration, seamless cross-branch communication, and total global narrative dominance is just non-negotiable now. Without all these pillars standing strong, the modern war machine completely falters. Which leads us with a final, kind of provocative thought to chew on today. If Desert Storm is the definitive classic of modern warfare, does mastering its lessons truly prepare us for tomorrow's conflicts? Or does an over-reliance on this exact formula just trap us in the successes of the past? I mean, as technology continues its relentless exponential advance, will this blueprint remain our guide, or is the future going to demand an entirely new face of war? Thank you so much for joining me in the briefing room today. Keep questioning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.